In the modern world, there are some societies that offer free healthcare, affordable education, a strong welfare state, higher taxes on the wealthy, and greater economic equality. To some, these represent the foundations of a fair society. To others, they are the beginning of socialism and a threat to individual freedom. For more than a century, Western democracies have struggled with the same fundamental question: how much should government intervene in the economy? Too little and enormous inequalities can emerge. Too much, and governments risk weakening the incentives that generate prosperity in the first place. So, is the socialist ideal appropriate for Western democracies? The answer depends on what we actually mean by socialism, and that's where things become interesting. Let's take a closer look, beginning with a definition. 1. What is socialism? The word socialism is used so loosely today that it can mean almost anything. But traditionally, socialism involves significant collective or state ownership of the means of production, such as factories, infrastructure, natural resources, and major industries. Its central argument is relatively simple. If wealth is created collectively by society, why should its benefits become concentrated among a relatively small number of people? Capitalism takes a different approach. Private individuals own businesses and property. Markets determine prices. Competition allocates resources. And individuals are generally free to accumulate wealth. But here's the important point. Virtually no major Western democracy operates under either system in its pure form. Most are mixed economies. 2. Western democracies are already partly socialized. Consider Australia, or Britain, Canada, Germany, France, and even the United States. They all combine capitalist markets with government intervention. Governments provide roads, tunnels and bridges, schools, police, defense, pensions, and unemployment assistance. And, in most Western countries, universal or heavily subsidized healthcare. Governments also regulate workplaces, financial institutions, food safety, and the environment. So, the real debate isn't simply capitalism or socialism. Western societies settled that argument decades ago. The real question is, where should markets end and government begin? 3. The socialist argument. The strongest argument for socialist principles begins with inequality. Capitalism is extraordinarily effective at creating wealth, but it does not necessarily distribute that wealth equally. 2 children can be born in the same city on the same day, yet enter completely different worlds. One inherits wealth, attends excellent schools, and is provided with connections and opportunities. The other begins life in poverty. Socialists argue that freedom means very little without genuine opportunity. A person may technically be free to attend university, but if they cannot afford it, how meaningful is that freedom? A person may have the freedom to receive medical treatment, but if treatment bankrupts them, how valuable is that freedom? The socialist ideal, therefore, attempts to provide a minimum foundation beneath everyone with universal access to healthcare, education, housing assistance, income support, and protection from extreme poverty. 4. The success of social democracy. This brings us to countries such as Sweden, Denmark, and Norway. They are sometimes described as socialist. But that's misleading because they are fundamentally capitalist economies. In those Scandinavian countries, private businesses still operate. People own property, entrepreneurs become wealthy, and markets determine most prices. What distinguishes these countries is their relatively large welfare states and higher levels of taxation. This model is better described as social democracy. The Nordic countries demonstrate that competitive capitalism can coexist with universal healthcare, extensive social protection, and comparatively low levels of income inequality. But there is a price. These systems require substantial taxation, not simply of billionaires, but of ordinary middle-income citizens as well. There is no such thing as a free welfare state, because someone ultimately has to pay for it. 5. The importance of incentives. This leads directly to one of socialism's greatest weaknesses. Imagine two people. One works 60 hours a week, takes financial risks, builds a company, employs hundreds of people. The other chooses to work considerably less. If the economic system produces almost identical outcomes for both, what incentive exists to take the risk? Markets reward people for creating things others want, like new medicines, better technology, cheaper products, and more efficient businesses. While profit can produce greed, profit can also motivate innovation. The challenge is therefore not eliminating inequality entirely. It is determining how much inequality a society should tolerate while preserving economic incentives and social cohesion. 6. When government becomes too powerful. There is problem when governments become too powerful. Socialism requires government to exercise greater control over economic resources. But governments are run by people, and people make mistakes. Bureaucracies can become bloated and inefficient. Political interests can influence investment. Government-owned businesses are protected from competition. And when economic power and political power become concentrated in the same institution, the consequences can become dangerous. The 20th century provides extreme examples of socialist experiments that became authoritarian, such as the Soviet Union, Maoist China, other centrally planned economies like Cuba and North Korea. But an important distinction is necessary. Their failures do not prove that every welfare program inevitably leads to dictatorship. Universal healthcare is not the same thing as abolishing private property. A pension system is not communism. There is an enormous spectrum between a completely free market and a centrally planned economy. 7. Capitalism has pitfalls too. It is well known that capitalism has its own weaknesses. Markets don't care about fairness. They respond to supply, demand, and purchasing power. A pharmaceutical company may have little commercial incentive to develop a treatment for an extremely rare disease. A private company may have little reason to build infrastructure in an isolated community if it cannot make a profit. Pollution can impose costs on society that aren't reflected in the price of a product, and monopolies can destroy the very competition capitalism depends upon. This is why even strongly capitalist countries regulate markets. The debate isn't really about whether government should intervene. It already does. The difficult question is when intervention produces better outcomes than free markets. 8. Equality versus freedom. At the heart of this debate lies a deeper philosophical conflict: equality versus freedom. Suppose one person earns 10 times more than another. Is that unfair? Perhaps. But what if they created 10 times more economic value? Now imagine government heavily taxes that person to redistribute their income. Society becomes more equal. But the productive individual has less control over the wealth they created. Neither principle can simply defeat the other when we consider that absolute economic equality would require enormous government intervention in the form of higher taxes to redistribute the wealth. Alternatively, absolute economic freedom could produce extreme concentrations of wealth and power. Therefore, many Western democracies exist in the uncomfortable territory between the two extremes. 9. What about the very wealthy? This becomes particularly controversial when discussing billionaires. Supporters of wealth redistribution argue that enormous fortunes can translate into political influence which undermine equality of opportunity. Critics respond that many fortunes were created by building companies that generated enormous economic value. Both arguments contain some truth. But the important question isn't simply, should billionaires exist? A better question is, does the economic system allow wealth to become permanently entrenched while preventing others from advancing? A society can tolerate considerable inequality if people believe opportunity remains available. But when economic mobility and incentives disappear, inequality becomes politically explosive. Asking whether socialism is appropriate for Western democracy is perhaps misleading, because successful Western economies have already borrowed from both traditions. From capitalism, Western democracies have benefited from competition, private property, investment and profit entrepreneurship, and innovation. From socialist and social democratic traditions, Western democracies have benefited from universal education, social insurance, worker protections, public health care in many countries, progressive taxation. The modern Western economy is not purely capitalist, nor is it socialist. Instead, it is an ongoing compromise between the two. Conclusion: so, is the socialist ideal appropriate for Western democracies? Parts of it clearly already are. The belief that nobody should be denied basic education, healthcare, or dignity simply because they are poor has become deeply embedded across much of the democratic world. But history also warns against concentrating excessive economic power in the state. Markets generate extraordinary innovation and prosperity, yet markets left entirely alone can generate inequality, monopolies, and social instability. Perhaps the greatest mistake is believing we must choose between two extremes: pure capitalism or pure socialism. The most successful societies may instead ask a much more practical question: which system works best for which problem? Use markets where competition works. Use government where markets fail. Protect individual freedom, but preserve a basic social safety net. Reward achievement, but maintain genuine opportunity. Because ultimately, the objective of an economic system should not be ideological purity. It should be creating a society that is both prosperous and worth living in. What do you think? Have Western democracies moved too far towards socialism, or does capitalism need stronger safeguards to ensure prosperity is shared more broadly? And where should we draw the line between individual responsibility and collective responsibility? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and join us as we continue examining the ideas that have shaped politics, economics, and human civilization. Until next time, stay curious and keep asking questions.